I'm gonna go over some considerations when choosing a dog that nobody else on the internet talks about. Then I'm gonna go over 5 things that you have to consider. You need to take a moment and think about when it comes to you personally. We're gonna get a little deep together, so hang with me. Let's talk about your future. This is something that people rarely talk about when you're adopting a dog. When you're going out to the shelter or the rescue and you're looking at dogs, you're trying to think about, ooh, do I want a dog that sheds or do I want a dog that's high energy? And those are important to consider. But what are you going to be doing in 5 to 10 years? Do you know the interview question that you're always asked? You're like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you're like, I don't freaking know. Now you need to know. You got to figure that out before you bring a new dog into your house, because your life in 3 to 5 to 10 years may not be conducive to a dog. And I get that you're not a fortune teller. You may not know what your life's going to be like, but you need to try to guess. Are you planning on having a baby? Are you thinking about changing careers the next couple years to a job that's going to have a more demanding schedule? Are you planning any big trips coming up? For example, I had a friend who adopted a dog and 4 months later went to Asia for 3 weeks. And that was a really difficult time trying to get somebody to watch their new dog for a long time. Their dog was still getting adjusted. These are things that you need to consider. Who in your life can be your emergency backup for your new dog or dogs? So something you might not consider is if you just moved to a new city in the past couple years and you don't have a lot of people that you trust and you're thinking of adding a second dog to your family, do you have somebody in your life that you can easily call on to that can actually handle taking care of your dog or your dog? So for example, before we adopted Finnegan here when he was about 4.5 months old, we had to think about, okay, we're gonna go from a 1 dog to a 2 dog family. Do we have people in our life in our town that, in the unlikely event something bad would happen, would they be able to take care of 2 dogs? Do we have a pet sitter set up? And on that note, do you have a vet already set up? Especially if you're thinking of getting a puppy or a senior dog, you need to make sure that you have a relationship established with a holistic or integrative vet. And if you want some tips on how to pick a vet and what I look for, you can click the video here. Now that we're talking about food and vaccines and vet visits, you know what my next thing to consider is what are your finances like? If you're gonna get a bigger dog, we talked about this earlier, or an older dog or even a puppy, those type of dogs can have added costs. And that taps into my future question, is your job stable? Again, if you're gonna go from a household of 2 dogs to 3 dogs, are you gonna be able to afford feeding 3 dogs? When choosing a type of dog and their age and their size and their interactivity level, it's important to think about the costs that are gonna be associated with that. You're gonna pick a higher energy dog because you wanna work with them, you wanna do agility trials and obedience trials and rally training and do all these crazy fun things. There are fees associated with that. Dog training classes are, for good reason, not inexpensive. And let's not forget your household, right? Like not just the type of house you have, but also who's in your house. So when you're picking a dog, you need to factor in, do you have a yard or do you live in a condo? Do you have a large house where a large dog can fit? Or do you have a house that would make it really difficult for a really small dog or maybe an older arthritic dog to get around in? Do you have small children that may get run over or pushed over on accident by a larger dog who doesn't know their own strength? Or do you have a ton of roommates or friends coming in and out of your home that may accidentally step on or kick your smaller dog if you have a really tiny dog that you're thinking of bringing in that are hard to see? Obviously I have a floofy coated dog here, and guess what he does? He attracts everything. So we have a big yard and it's really cool because we live near the city and I love being able to throw the ball for him in the back. But what comes with a bigger yard and a floofy dog like this is more leaves, more grass, more dirt, more mud, more twigs, more pollen, more bugs on their coat to then come in your house. And the bigger the dog you have and the floofier the dog you have, the more likely that is to get in your home. So if you're a clean freak, you may want to look at a dog with a shorter coat. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but if you want to know everything to expect before getting a doodle of any kind, click the video linked up here. Now let's go into the next thing, which is your emotional and mental health today. And I know that sounds a little insane, but if you are going to get a new puppy or you're going to opt for a border collie, which is typically much higher energy than, let's say, a Saint Bernard, are you mentally and emotionally ready to commit to working with that dog several times a day, every single day? Are you mentally ready to do whatever it takes to give your dog the best life and whatever they need to live a long and healthy life? If you have just changed jobs, you just moved to a new state, there's a lot of unknown variables in your life, I would probably first recommend to wait a little bit before bringing a new dog into your life. But if you're determined and you're going to get a dog regardless, that situation, you might do better with a full-grown adult dog that's going to have a little bit potentially less surprises. This angle makes my knees look massive. All right, we're not gonna go with that angle, but in just a moment, I'm gonna talk about my number one tip for a new dog or new puppy, period. Everyone needs to listen to this, but before I go into that, I'm gonna go over a few bonus things to consider. And these are things that I rarely see people talk about when it comes to choosing a type of dog. First off though, this is my cat Haven. She's 15 years old. So of course you wanna make sure that if you already have pets, that you're choosing a dog that would get along with your current pets. Huh, Haven? Isn't that right? And if you guys can't tell, I have Haven here and then my dude Finn. So they do get along, although Finn does like to try to chase her when she runs. But the first thing, the weather or the climate of where you live. Are you getting, for example, a husky while living in scalding hot desert Arizona? Whether it's snowing blizzard outside, pouring rain months on end, or scalding hot Texas, like where I'm at, it's important that you get a dog that's going to be able to stay healthy both mentally and physically in wherever you live. Also, what about your car? I know you're like, what does it matter what kind of car I have? Let me tell you, it does. So when we first adopted my Labrador Bentley, I had a 2-door coupe. You know how hard and honestly unsafe it is to put a large dog in the back seat of a coupe? It's not easy. And then when I got 2 dogs, it became basically impossible. So make sure that your car can fit your dog. And no, I do not think that under any circumstance, any dog at any time should ever go in the back bed of a truck. I'm sorry, they shouldn't. They should be strapped in with a harness or in a crate in the back seat of the car or the trunk area if there's room, if it's like an SUV. And on that same note of large dogs, if you're thinking of getting a large dog, can you hold that dog and restrain that dog on leash if they were to pull with all their might in the opposite direction? Now, I never recommend to just yank and pull on your dog, and obviously you should be working on heeling and loose leash techniques, which if you want my best practices on leash training your dog, click the video up here. There's a whole playlist down below as well, but there may be a situation that your dog catches you off guard and pulls, and even the strongest person may still fall down. But if you're a tiny human and you have a gigantic dog that you're not going to spend the time to leash train, that's something you should consider because you need to be able to hold on to your dog. And what about your neighbors? Are you friendly with them? Because if you get a dog that likes to bark a lot and you don't manage that, there could be issues. For example, beagles and hound dogs, they're known to be vocal. And if your neighbors aren't okay with that and you're not good at working on that, that could cause some tension and cause major issues down the road. Or if you decide to get a dog that has a high prey drive, meaning they like to chase after things that are running away from them or small, terriers are usually like this, greyhounds are like this, Labradors can be as well, golden retrievers, and you have a ton of trees in your backyard, you may be struggling with a dog that's always chasing the squirrels and the birds and the chipmunks. I actually had that experience with a foster dog. If you guys remember him, his name is Theo. If you do not follow the story of Theo, you need to. You can click the link up here and follow that. But we had him for over a year. He had hip issues, but man, did he have a wild prey drive. And we lived in a property at the time that had tons of squirrels, and it took so much freaking work to get him not to bark and chase at those squirrels anytime we went out back, and we overcame it, but it took a lot of effort, and not everybody is willing to work that hard, so it's something you have to consider. And you may be wondering, how will I know if the dog that I'm getting has high prey drive or has high energy or is not motivated by food? And here's the best way to do that in my opinion, and that is to go through a rescue group or a shelter group, because many of those use fosters. And what a foster is a volunteer, which I've done for over 55 dogs, and the foster brings in a rescue dog, takes care of it until it finds its forever home. And you know what that means? That foster knows everything there is to know about that dog, and they can relay that information to you to make sure that you are having a good match. So I highly recommend just to look up rescue group, rescue dog group, and you can even go by breed. For example, I got Finnegan from iDog Rescue, which is a golden doodle poodle mix rescue that takes in doodles that have been abandoned and rehomed, and that's how I got Finnegan. Okay, you've been waiting for this. My number one tip when it comes to any new dog that you bring in to your family, and that is, hard as it may seem to pick the right dog for your family, I'm telling you, with all the media and the marketing in the industry right now, it is even harder to pick the right and the best food for your dog or puppy. And I recommend wholeheartedly, and this is what I feed my dogs, a raw whole food diet. And what that means is a diet that is not kibble. I do not recommend for any dog a dry food, kibble food that has been highly processed because of just that. Every dry food, every bag of food that sits on the shelf at the pet store has been highly processed. That's the reason it's able to be shelf stable, because it's 30 to 40 to 50% carbohydrates. In my opinion, dogs do not need that many carbohydrates. Dogs biologically need whole, raw, fresh food. So my dogs eat a diet of raw meat, raw crushed bone, and raw organ. If you want to know more of what that looks like, you can click the video right here and I'll go into great detail on how to pick a food. And if you really are set on feeding a kibble or a dry food, then you can click the video right here and I show you how to pick the best one in my opinion. And I hope you have a beautiful day. Goodbye.